Blood Knights is a game I picked up on the cheap because it was a fantasy co-op RPG, so I wanted to play it with Gage. So I went into it knowing nothing other than it was cheap on the 360 and was a fantasy RPG. And to my surprise, it was also a vampire crusader game. And this is extra wild, because I just finished playing Crusader games, which I made a video for, and I just finished playing the Blood Rain games, which were vampire games, and I also just finished making a video for. So I have both those things I just finished, and to have a game that's a Crusader vampire game felt perfect to me and was a complete surprise. I also looked at the online reviews of this game before playing, just the scores, nothing to spoil anything, and I saw that it was very poorly rated. So I figured maybe this will suck and I might have to move on, but to my surprise, again, this did not suck and the reviews are straight bullshit. Now I will say, if they bought this at full price back in the day, I could understand rating it poorly, but for the $1 or $2 I paid for this, it was worth the price. Player 1 is Jeremy, ex-crusader who has become a vampire and is bonded to that vampire. Player 2 is the bonded vampire, Eliza, or Liz for short. Jeremy and Liz are some suck-ass names for vampires. And as vampires, they should be suck-neck names, not suck-ass. Now, Jeremy, who used to be a human crusader, enemy of the vampires, is more than a one-dimensional character. He is, in fact, a whole two-dimensional one. Three-dimensional if we're talking physically. See, with Jeremy being a human who hunts vampires and now being turned into one, the game kinda lets you pick which side you are gonna be on. Human or vampire. Which could have been an interesting choice if it was actually explored better, but it isn't. On the vampire side, everyone just seems evil. Only Liz seems okay, and they never present you with a non-evil vampire. On the human side, most humans are evil, but there's a couple good ones, so for that alone I ended up going with the humans. I kept waiting for more information before choosing, like being skeptical of men and the church and all that, waiting for that information that was going to change my mind, and it never happened. The vampires are just the bad guys and are for Satan, and the crusaders are just the good guys. Kind of. I'd argue most are bad, but there's some good. But the point being, it's supposed to be pretty black and white. I always treat the church of any religion like the Brotherhood of Steel, where sometimes they're the good guys, sometimes they're the bad guys, and I'm always iffy until I know which. But Blood Knights was not interested in giving me those kind of details. It constantly said, yo, story's not important, just play the game. Also, even if the story was important, it would have been hard to take seriously with the insane voice acting. If I remember correctly, this game is from Germany, and maybe it sounds better in German, but the people they got to do in English voice acting for the translation, I don't believe that there are humans who have ever experienced a real emotion. I think aliens crash landed in Germany and immediately found jobs in Germany doing the translated voice acting of this game. Of all the UFO sightings and alien footage, none had made me believe they were among us, but after hearing this voice acting, I now believe. Yes, then I heard their voice, and now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind. Honestly, it's quite comical. It's not as bad as the House of the Dead 2, which I think is the all-time worst voice acting, but it's just barely a step above that. The voice lines crack me up, and I feel it's only fair to show you some.
Finally, after all those months, I owe you my life, even though you're from the other side.
We need to see your town.
See the town? Seeing is done with the eyes. Always remember that.
Jeremy, when will you find the courage to accept your fate and kill yourself?
As your commander, I command you to jump off that bridge at once.
I would never take orders from a filthy vampire.
Oh, Jeremy.
Father, enough. This is not our captain anymore. Stop talking to the creature he has become.
Do you think we traveled thousands of miles and fought like crazy just for some fame and gold? Damn no. We knew that the seal must be kept safe. Thanks for ruining Earth, vampire.
Gameplay-wise, it's pretty bare-bones hack-and-slash for Player 1, and Player 2 it's shooting crossbows at enemies. It being simple doesn't make it bad. I found myself having fun for the most part, and I will say the ability to suck the life out of people did make the game kinda easy, but I'm not one of those fucks who thinks easy games are bad. Sometimes I like easy games. Sometimes I like hard games. Difficulty doesn't indicate whether a game is good or not. That's stupid. Get out of here with that shit. Like, if you're a casual or an absolute beginner in games like this, you'll be able to beat this, and there are harder difficulties, but I just played the normal one. Also, both players can level up using both controllers. I don't know why that's so hard for some games to figure out, but this game did it. There's also some platforming, including some teamwork platforming, where one person has to push one person and the other one has to pull. And one of the big issues with this, other than that it doesn't always work, is that for the vampire to eat a person and for a vampire to lift up your teammate, those are the same button. Meaning sometimes when you're trying to eat someone, you lift up your teammate, or sometimes you're trying to lift your teammate and you eat someone. And so that can be annoying. You can be in combat and need health, but instead of getting that health, you end up giving your teammate a force wedgie and watching them dangle there while the enemies beat them. One time Gage held me in the air against my will so he could go through a doorway first, to which he was immediately stabbed by spikes for his crime. Now, despite being easy, there are two tricky enemies, and I'm not talking about bosses. The first type are mini-bosses who, despite the game telling you to beat them with the X button, it does not work. Instead, you have to use the button that makes you lift, which I want to say was either LT or RT, and then press X, and that will kill them. But the game does not tell you that, it only tells you to press X, and it's not like you have to do that for anything else, so how would you know? The other tricky enemy is the camera. Sometimes it wants to follow me, sometimes it wants to follow Gage, sometimes it gets scared and it hides behind a barrier until we can coax it to come out and keep playing. And sometimes it gets distracted by something and forgets we even exist. It is a garbage camera, and I'd rather have the Lego game kind of thing, where it's like when you're together, it's one screen, and when you separate it becomes kind of split screen or something. Or even the ability to kind of control the camera. The game ends with us fighting a paladin who's gonna commit genocide so that people in a panic will become religious and the church will get more followers. And fortunately, the good members of the church are against him as well. And I don't have footage of this because it's saved to my Xbox instead of my capture card for some reason. So just imagine I'm fighting a paladin here. Pretty cool, huh? Now I will say there might be more than one ending, as there was various choices you could make along the way that may have changed the game. But I really do think one playthrough was enough. So yeah, I talked a lot of shit about this game, and from what I said, you may think it deserves that low rating, but there's one more thing I need to say, and that's this game is fun. It's quite enjoyable as long as you have a second player. If you play it alone, it's probably going to be pretty boring, and if you're expecting more characters, don't. But overall, it's fun. Would I recommend it? Like, maybe if you're with a friend and you've already played like all the good co-op games. But I don't think it's a must-play. I don't think it's even a good game. It's like a fine game. Not bad, and it's worth playing with a second player. This is why I don't give number scores. It's hard to put a number on how good a game is. Like, this isn't a good game, but the bad dialogue brings it around to be, like, good again. And overall, the game is still fun, even though it's just fine. So what the fuck kind of score is that? Like 50 out of 100? But see, then it sounds bad. I guess what I'm saying about this game is, I'd buy that for $1. Kingdoms of Amular ReReckoning is a remastered re-release of Kingdoms of Amular Reckoning. It's the full game with the old DLC included, and if you want, a new DLC is available to buy. Now this is coming from THQ, as the rights were sold to them. This game was originally published by 38 Studios, which is no longer around. See, retired baseball player Kurt Schilling decided to throw his hand into the game world, and to do so he went out and hired what I assume to be an expensive dream team. R.A. Salvatore was the writer here, and he is a big name author for fantasy writing. Todd McFarlane of Spawn fame was also working on this game, and Ken Rolston, the lead developer of Morrowind and Oblivion, also here. The team was getting stacked, but it just kept getting reworked, and money was falling into the project without any product coming out. At one point, the state of Rhode Island even gave 38 studios a massive loan from taxpayer dollars. They thought it would get their money back and then some, but no, 38 studios didn't make their money back and they closed down. Rhode Island ended up out of money, and when taxpayers found out their taxes went to a video game, they weren't happy. The other thing about the game to note is that the main thing being worked on was a massive MMO, but this never happened, as Kingdoms of Amular was supposed to be a taste of that world, so money could come in while they kept working on the MMO. So, saying this, you would think the game would be a small game, as it's just supposed to be a taste. And I went in expecting maybe a mid-length RPG. I was wrong. This is one of the biggest RPGs I've ever played. It felt like I was in the game forever. I mean, I only played 65-ish hours probably, and I beat the game, but I promise there was still somehow so much to do. With all the quests I didn't do, there might have been another, 20-ish hours or more to go, but I was quite done once I reached the ending. This is not me saying, oh, the game is bad, not at all, but it felt bloated. There are so many quests, and while some of them are good, most of them are tedious nothing burgers. They're not bad. There was never a time I found myself disliking the game, but I do feel we could really shrink down the number of quests and focus on making them better. I was getting so many quests that half the time I couldn't even remember what I was doing for them. Quests like, go water 4 pots, go kill 4 of this kind of beast, or go find this person for me. These aren't bad quests, but they weren't doing a lot for me. There are 212 quests in the base game. This isn't including faction quests, DLC quests, and repeatable quests, and lots of quests have multi-parts to them. Come to think of it, maybe 20 hours would not even cover all I still had left to do. It is a massive finished product. The gameplay is good though. I've heard it be described as a better Fable, and I can definitely see that. It has an artistic style that feels Fable, and it doesn't have the stupid humor of Fable, so that's good too. But I don't know if I agree with that statement. I do kind of like how Fable told its story better, and on top of Fable, I also noticed a lot of Elder Scrolls type stuff, such as how the books look. I noticed a lot of Dragon Age stuff, such as how the inventory system works. I even saw some Lord of the Rings feeling influences. Tell me these aren't the orcs marching with the cave troll to break open a door, and then the men of Gondor rush out to fight them. No, what Kingdoms of Amular felt like to me was a game that was its own and wore its influences proudly. I also enjoy the combat. You have a main weapon, a secondary weapon, a shield, and powers, and there are tons of options to mix and match. Sure, I went with a sword and some sharp throwing discs, but I could have chosen a greatsword, or a hammer, or a staff, or a wand thingy, or a bow and arrow. There's a lot of replayability. Plus, I made my character very strong with melee, but also good with magic. I had just finished watching Legend of Korra, and I feel like that was an influence on how I built my character. A bigger influence was probably the Elder Scrolls, as I often make a dark elf looking character. But my point was, I could have went with a lot of different weapon types, and I could have went with other character builds. I didn't put anything into more sneaky, stealthy stats, and I never went super high in magic, so if I were to play again, I could build a character who is very different. There's a lot of replayability here, and story-wise, everyone has a fate, but you died and you were brought back to life, and you are now something special. The Fateless One. Now, the other important thing to know about the world is that there are other beings called the Fae. They can appear human-like, but They aren't really. Fae can also look like monsters and all sorts of other things. What's really important about them is they don't die the same way and reincarnate back. So when an evil group of Fae decide to end the world, people can't last forever against them. How do you beat an enemy that keeps coming back? Luckily, they have the Fateless One on their side. It's a fine story that would have been more interesting to me if I wasn't spending hours at a time doing other shit before remembering to do the main stuff. There's just so much to do here. If you have ADHD, you might want to stay away from this game unless you're ready to devote your life to it. Also, one of the DLCs has these people called the Colossi, and they are these live stone people. The god didn't want them to be so intelligent, but now they are, so the gods have abandoned them. The main villain here wants to revert everyone back to Neanderthal brains so that the gods will love them again, but obviously they don't want that. Not only is that a cool story, but it opened my eyes to new thoughts. Not really deep thoughts on the whole thing, more like, wow, what would it be like to have a Colossi woman dominate you? Wow. Combat is fantastic. I really like it, and it was my favorite thing of this game. Not only do the animations of combat respond well to each other, but there's just so many actions to use, so much to do, so many strategies to use. It's really cool. I finally got back into trying to finish Dragon Age, and let me tell you, going from that clunky garbage combat to this is day and night. Everything is so reactive. The hits, the getting hits, the moved. I love shield rushing an enemy who's charging me. Combat is plenty of fun. The gameplay is fun, the maps and layouts are good. Other than this one time a quest broke on me and I had to leave the area and come back for it to work again, I don't have a lot of complaints. It's honestly a really solid gameplay. It just felt like it was too bloated and I wanted less quests but more quality ones. Also, this isn't a huge deal, but bosses were often too easy. I try not to complain about difficulties because sometimes I like things very easy. Sometimes I like things hard. I just want my game to be fun. Difficulty doesn't matter that much to me. That said, if I used my special power that can slow time and increase my damage boost and my XP, that just makes bosses a joke. Again, I love being overpowered, that's always fun, but I'm gonna need most of these bosses to get a redesign and put up some sort of a fight. It's kind of the same issue I had in Oblivion. Really, I just need a boss to feel tougher than their, like, men that you fight. That's it. It can still be easy, but when a boss feels just as tough as any generic guy, then what's the point? Anyway, overall it's a pretty good game. Not an amazing must-play game, but a game that is good and has a ton of content. Whether you buy on sale or full price, you are getting your money's worth in terms of content. Also, after looking it up, this is a fairly normal-ish number of quests to have. I don't know why it felt like it was so much more. Maybe it's because these quests are often so multi-parted, or that most of them are just tedious busy work. I don't know, but it felt like a lot. The story quests are, actual story quests, but the side quests often are very tedious busy work. Anyway, that is it. I still think it's a good game. I just don't think it's like a masterpiece. Forgotten Realms: The Demon Stone is a game that wants to be the Lord of the Rings PS2 games so badly. Specifically, the Two Towers and Return of the King one. That isn't a bad thing. I absolutely love those games, and they stand as the champions of whatever the fuck that genre is. It's like level-by-level beat-em-ups with RPG stuff in between. And unlike the other ones that tried to do the same thing, it doesn't just wear its influence on its sleeve. It wears it as its skin. And again, that isn't bad, because if you love those Lord of the Rings games, then you have this to try. Now, at the time of writing this, I am not that familiar with the Forgotten Realms, but that's okay. I don't think you need to be to play. It's a Dungeons and Dragons world, and is in many other video games like Baldur's Gate. Believe it or not, this isn't even the first level-by-level RPG beat-em-up of the Dungeons and Dragons. There was also like a couple D&D arcade games that were hella fun. But anyway, back to this game. So in this game you play as a warrior human, a mage human, and a half dark elf, half wood elf scout. And this was a dilemma for me, because usually I'm like a warrior, and sometimes a mage. But if Dark Elf is an option, then I always pick Dark Elf. So how the hell do I pick between these characters? Well, it turns out I don't have to, because one unique thing separating this game from those Lord of the Rings games is that you play as all three characters. They all level together, and you're able to switch back and forth between them using the D-pad, and that's pretty nice. The game also has special segments for each to excel in, like the scout has some stealth sections, and the mage some sections only he can do. So other than the gameplay and level structure, what makes this Lord of the Rings like? Well, you open on a big battle of orcs, and you gotta fight them. There's a lot of orc killing. Then we end up in a room that looks kind of like where Gimli's cousin was buried, and then there's a lava part that looks like Mines of Moria, and we gotta fight off this Balrog knockoff and a giant spider boss, and there's parts where you kick down ladders just like in Lord of the Rings, and parts where you gotta use fire on enemies because your sword doesn't hurt it, kinda like the Lord of the Rings levels with the Nazgul, and your mage totally ends up in a Gandalf outfit. It's just a very PS2 Lord of the Rings type game. Now one could argue that, yeah, but that's all just like fantasy. No matter what fantasy game you play, there will be stuff that's Lord of the Rings. That's just gonna happen. And I agree. But again, this game clearly wanted to be Lord of the Rings. Again, not saying that's a bad thing. I want more games like that. But is this a good game? Nah, not really. It's still fun. I'd say like a portion of this game is good. At least the first half of the game, I was really enjoying it. Like 70 to 80% is pretty fun. It's those last levels that really suck ass. They're tedious as shit, and the first parts of the game had a lot going on for it. Constant changing of areas, of enemies, various things to keep it from getting stale, and it was feeling like it was a good pace moving about. But the last few levels say, fuck that shit. What if we stopped respecting your time and made some of the most tedious, repetitive fights ever? And I get that it being the end is supposed to make it harder, but harder doesn't have to equal less fun. Harder doesn't have to equal more boring. Another thing that bugged me is I would save up so much money for like a special sword or something, just for the game to end up giving me a better one at the end of the level, which was fine, and it was also not fine. Because I specifically spent a ton of money on a sword to make sure it had like fire on it, so when I was at that level where the enemies can only be hurt by fire, that level was going to be easier, because then I had one that would only do fire. And then the second I bought it, it was like, congratulations, now here's a lightning sword that's replaced your fire sword. And it got snatched away. And if I would have known that was going to happen, I wouldn't even bought the sword. It was a lot of money. And I'm just out money now, so that's a bummer. And I know you're thinking, that's some bitch-ass whooshy shit. Real men don't complain about spending a fortune on a sword that's removed from inventory because the game gave you a different one. Real men just know what's gonna happen anyway. And yeah, okay, fair point, but maybe like the Forgotten Realms, I done forgot. Now, what's the story? Well, you see, the story was written by famous author R.A. Salvador, who was the writer of Kingdoms of Amular and other things. So what's the story? Well, Patrick Stewart is in this, briefly, as a game character that doesn't really do a lot. He almost dies, but then he doesn't. So what's the story? Look, man, I don't fucking know. It was kind of unimportant and I was just enjoying the gameplay. It's mainly just killing things and going to the next area and killing things. Okay, so basically there's two villains. They both could take over the world. You're trying to stop them while they're both also trying to fight each other. And in the end, Hopper, Elle, and Will kill Vecna, and that's about it. This isn't some masterpiece, but it is kind of fun, and it's a good game for a cheap pickup. My favorite thing in the game was a level where I got to be a fourth character, a dark elf warrior, and that's what I'm talking about, man. That's why we play games, boys. That's what it's all about. Every shitty moment, everything I have ever said negative about this game flies out the window, because I got to be a dark elf warrior. And he is good, and he is cool, and he is badass. And honestly, he felt like the strongest character. I was digging him, until unfortunately they take him away at the end of the level. I flew too close to the sun. They had to push me back down. That was the most fun level. Constant tower defense, killing all the enemies. What is my voice becoming? This level is about as Lord of the Rings as it gets. If you switch the snow for rain, you got the Battle of Helm's Deep. Hell, there's probably mods for it on the PC to make it Lord of the Rings. Because the game is on GOG and Steam. I played the PS2 version though. The last thing I think that hurts is like the characters aren't very good or interesting. Both the mage and warrior are kinda bland, and the scout, which is the most interesting character, is just annoying as hell. They're not good characters. They're not bad characters. They're kinda nothing burgers. Not the most interesting. So yeah. Is it worth a play? Yep, I'd say so. Is it a masterpiece? Not at all. Just some good, mindless fun.